Well, hello, this is Pamela Byrd, and let's talk boundaries, shall we? I am sitting here with my husband Tyrone, and we are sitting on our patio. It's a beautiful fall day, and we thought, you know what? Let's change the scenery. A change of scenery is good, and change is good. A lot of people don't understand that, but you'll understand that change is good. So I was sitting here, we were having a conversation in the rain on our back patio, and Tyrone decided that he wanted to ask me some questions and he wanted to record it for this next episode. So I thought, why not give it over to Tyrone and let him start. So
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to ask questions. Many times, Pam is helping other people getting through their issues and challenges in life. But just like anybody else, we're all human and we all have things going on in our life. So this is the time that I want to open it up and allow her to tell you who she is and what she is about in life.
Who I am is I am a boundaries coach, and I'm also an author, and I'm also a journaling practitioner. And who I am a warrior. I'm a warrior for Christ. I am someone who has been assigned by God, my Heavenly Father, to help people. One of my spiritual gifts is exhortation. And the gift of exhortation, I help people to understand who they are, why they're going through the things they're going through, and what they can do to move forward in their lives, to get unstuck. And not only that, to identify the things in their lives that are preventing them from moving forward in the way that they want to move forward.
And that's a lot of information. So what got you to that point in your life where you realize that this is what I'm supposed to do?
So you mean my purpose? A lot of people will question their purpose or think they don't have one, but I know that we all have a purpose, and it's what we've gone through in life from the very time we were born that identifies who we are and what we were placed on this earth to do. And because I grew up in the type of environment I grew in, is a very toxic environment with a lot of childhood abuse, abandonment, those type of things, just some childhood trauma. Me with my two sisters, I had two sisters, my older sister Cheryl and my twin sister Angie. They both passed away. My twin sister she took her life 3 years ago. And because of the result of the childhood traumas that we experienced. And that was what my first book was about. It was called I Had a Twin, Disrupting the Cycle of Childhood Trauma. And so when my older sister, she passed away because she had sickle cell and she had some complications from that. She had a stroke when she was 42 years old and ended up passing away from pancreatitis in the next year. And the reason she passed away is because she didn't have the health coverage that she needed. She was on, public assistance, so she didn't have the health care that she needed that would be approved by the hospital in order for her to get the surgery that she needed. So she passed away, and then 3 years ago, my twin sister passed away. She took her life. And so as I went back, those are such strategic inflection points when someone passes away that's really close to you, that you really love. And it gets you to start thinking about, what is all this for? Why is all this happening to me? Everything happens to you for a reason, but you have to identify how those things that happen to you, your experiences, all come together like a tapestry to help you to identify what your purpose is. And so because of the experiences, because of the childhood experiences, the trauma and the different things, everything brought me to the point where I realized, you know what, I really need to help women in particular. I know men deal with issues from their childhood traumas, the residual effects, how it's impacting their lives today, but I personally am passionate about helping women to understand how their childhood traumas are impacting their lives today. And here's why: because there's so many things that I went through. I struggled with so many things growing up as a result of my childhood traumas, that I began to make decisions that were skewed. that were based on unhealthy behaviors that not only had I seen, but began to duplicate. And because of what I had seen, we see things in our lives and we can think that, oh, that's just the way it is. No, it's not. If you grew up in a toxic environment, dysfunctional childhood, then what you're passing on is not necessarily things that are healthy for you, or are they absolutely necessarily right. And what you're doing, if you have children or you have people around you, end up passing that on to them. And when you do that, you end up having that cycle of dysfunction that continues, and that people don't even realize, and they're continuing that cycle of dysfunction. So what I do, because of all that I've gone through, I help people to identify exactly what it is that they are bringing along with them, that excess baggage that they're bringing with them from their past into their current reality, and how it impacts their future, and it creates collateral damage. And that's what I talk about in my book, how the impact of your childhood trauma, when you grow up, if you don't deal with that and heal from that, what's going to happen is you're going to create residual damage in your life. There's residual effects of that trauma if you don't identify it, and then you end up passing that on to create collateral damage in the lives of the other people in your life that you truly love.
Wow, that's good. Well, see, guys, you're getting a little bit information as to why she is great at what she does. Now, I want to ask you another question. Is based on all the information that we talked about, some of the past, some of the things that you worked through. I know it, but they need to know why you are considered such an expert at what you do. What kind of work did you go through personally that gave you the strength, the ability now to lead others through that process?
That's a good question. How much time do you have? Well, the first thing I did, I realized, I had a conversation. I can think back to when I was a teenager, and I knew that God was with me, but I didn't know him personally because we didn't grow up in church. But there was always a voice inside of me when I became really depressed, or um, just feeling hopeless, and there was a voice inside of me that let me know that it's okay, that I'm with you. And so I knew that I had a purpose. It's just, you have a purpose, you just haven't figured out what it is. And a lot of times our pain can prevent us from identifying what that is. And I just got sick and tired, and I knew something had to give, and I just started to pray. I started to go to God. I gave my life to Christ when I was 18 years old. And even though I didn't start living like a Christian life, at least I knew that God was with me. And I kept going through things simply because of their behaviors that I was duplicating from my past, or I was running away. And when you do that, you make mistakes. And those are things that people want to talk about you, think about it. Are you one of those people that you grew up in a certain environment, and as you grow up, the adults are saying, I knew that person was going to turn out like that, or they expect you to turn out a certain way because of the way that you grew up, and I knew that I didn't want to have that same pattern repeating in my life or in the lives of my children. So what I did was I gave my life to Christ, first of all. Secondly, I started to read. I started to look at, okay, what's going on with me? I need to find that out. So I had to do the research to find out what was going on. And once I did that, I found a book. It was the most amazing book. I remember it was 1999. I found a book, and it's called Inner Bonding by Dr. Margaret Paul. And this book helped me to understand the importance of working with my inner child, connecting with my inner child. So as an adult, we have an inner child that's still hurting and still crying out for help. And if we ignore that inner child, then we're going to end up doing the same things we've always done, creating residual effects from the trauma that we never dealt with, not realizing it's that little girl inside of us, or the little boy that is hurting and crying out. And if we don't address them, because our parents never did, our parents, they rejected us, they abused us, they abandoned us, they neglected us, not all parents, but in the situation that I'm in, mine, so my mother was that person, and my dad they divorced when we were almost 2 years old. So, and my dad was in the Coast Guard, so he had a military career, and so he was all over the world on ships. So, a lot of times we'd see my father, but it wasn't very often. And we had to get to the point where we had to learn how to live in the situation we were in with my mom. So, so to answer your question, one of the things I gave my life to Christ. I then started doing the research to find out what exactly is going on, and why am I this way, or why do I feel this way? And I had to get to a place of clarity, understanding why I was where I was, and then I had to do something about it. So I started doing the things that I found out that I needed to do in order to heal. I've gone to therapy a couple times, probably 4 times in my life. And I talk about that in my book too. I had a twin disrupting the cycle of childhood trauma, because you can't expect to get through this on your own. Um, uh, you gotta be willing, and you got to have the courage. One of the things you mentioned about, how did I get to the point? It took a lot of courage. Took a lot of courage to get out of what I was doing, to being where I was, getting the results I was getting, to looking to get different results. So I had to have the courage to do that. And you know what? We have courage. We do things all the time. Just stepping outside, getting in the car, putting your seatbelt on, and driving, and knowing there's other cars, other people in the cars. It takes courage. There's a lot you can do. You just got to muster the courage to do it for yourself. And I did that. And then I started to learn about, you know, my value, who I was. God started to show me who I was. My relationships with that little girl inside of me, I was able to find out who I was because of who I could be for her. And
Real quick, let me ask you one question, because I know you talk about the relationship with the girl or her. What technique or strategy or something that you use that everybody can use, but they fail to use, but it worked perfectly for you?
Journaling. There's a different form of journaling that you do. It's called dialogical journaling. And this is something you do to have a conversation with the little girl or the little boy inside of you. And it helps to build a level of trust between the two of you, because at this very moment, that little girl or that little boy does not trust you, because you've gotten that little girl and that little boy to where you are right now, and they're not happy. And so there has to be a relationship that's rebuilt with that. And the best way to do that is through that particular style of journaling called dialogical journaling. It's a conversation between you and the little girl, that little boy inside of you.
Wow.
And I just want to say it's interesting, because in the dialogical journaling, you can have that dialogue with that little girl and that little boy as a conversation, or you can refer to it as the Holy Spirit. And so I like to refer to that little girl as me, but because it's your little girl is all about, or little boys are all about your emotions, and the adult is all about the logic and the things that your thoughts. And a lot of times, too many people allow their emotions to take control of their thinking, and so they make decisions based on their emotions, and they're not always healthy decisions. So when you do the dialogical journaling, what that does is that helps your thinking, your brain, to have a conversation with your emotions, so that you can come together and come to a level of a concerted effort of making a solution that's a viable solution. It's not just based on emotions.
So, guys, I wanted to share. We can talk about 4 hours, 5, 6 hours on this thing, because she tells me a lot, and I like to hear a lot from her. But I'm gonna wrap it up with one thing that, if you're, if I know people can get the value of who you are, but if you can sum it up into one thing, why they should refer to you or someone like you to get the help that they need in life to have a better life, what would that be?
We don't always know when we're doing things the wrong way, or if there's a different way that we should do it, or if there's things that we should consider, because we're used to hearing things from ourselves. So when you work with a life coach, when you work with me, I'm just going to say me, I'm not going to say all life coaches, me, because that title, coach, life coach, has just taken off into all kinds of tangents, and I really don't know what they mean. All I know is God created me to be a life coach, and he created me to be specifically a boundaries coach, because I teach women how to set boundaries in the areas of their lives that truly matter. Because here's the deal: you don't really know how your unresolved childhood traumas are impacting your life today. So you keep dealing with the same issues over and over again, a do loop, like a hamster wheel. And then there's always the thought that somebody else is to blame for that. You could, like, let's say if you're dating someone, right? You're dating a couple men. Let's put it in that perspective for women, and you keep getting the same results. Oh, the face looks a little different, but and the first month is cool, everything's, oh, I'm in love, blah blah blah, but I love him. This is where your emotions are coming in, right? But if you identify some of the patterns and you start identifying the yellow flags and the red flags, then you realize that, you know what, this may not be the person for me. But we hang on for too long because of our emotions out of fear. And so what working with me helps you to look at, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then you have this allows me to help you to look at the situations, because I'm going to ask you questions that are going to help to probe, dig deep, excavate to see what's going on and why exactly is this happening for you. It's not always somebody else. Usually it's a decision that we have to make. And like I always tell people, you don't have a problem. You simply have a decision to make. Now, the decisions aren't easy, but to identify it is simple. Once you start seeing the patterns and you're like, oh, wow, I know what I need to do. And then working with me, I help you to get the courage, to get the details, the specifics, and create a plan for what you need to do to move out of the situation that you're in. And one thing that I always tell people also is I'm not here to wallow in your misery with you, but to escort you out of it. And so there is no victimhood. I only coach people that are willing to do the work, that have the courage to do the work, and they're ready to move from where they are to moving closer to the place where they need to be. And hopefully that's in the direction that God wants them to go to walk in.
Wow. Guys, there you have it, a real life coach giving real issues and helping you to solve it in ways that'll help your life better. Pamela, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to ask you these probing questions. I know they were spontaneous.
Yeah.
But you want spontaneous. You want the real deal. You don't want something that's sugar coated. And I appreciate you for being willing to give me the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate it. I didn't know you were going to ask these questions, but they are very, very organic, because people need to know. And we got a new year coming up. And in this new year, time out for continuing with the same thing we've been doing if the same thing hasn't been working. There's a lot of people out there who are comfortably uncomfortable, and they're making excuses for where they are, and it's not necessarily do that once you know what you're working with. Like I said, I had to do the work. First of all, I had to know what I was working with. I had to identify how my traumas were preventing me from moving forward. I even had to identify how the mistakes I was making had caused the situation I was in, and how was I going to get out of it, right? We can't beat ourselves up for something we didn't know, but when we know better, we do better. And so the questions that you're asking are great, because it helps people to understand for the new year, if you really want to make some change, if you really want to do some things differently, show up differently, get different results, then it's time to look at, okay, how can Pam help me to get to the place where I need to get in order to move to where I want to go?
Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys.
And what do I say? What do we say? This is Pamela Byrd, your boundaries coach. And
let's talk boundaries, shall we?